Hello and welcome to She the People's Women's Writers Fest. She the People's endeavor is to bring in new and engaging conversations and put the spotlight on women and their writing. As part of Women Writers Fest, powered by Colors, we are here for the panel discussion titled Is Fiction Dead? Reading into 2023. For this, we have four esteemed panelists starting with Sonia Bahl. Sonia writes books and screenplays, and her novel, Spectacular Miss, has been optioned for a screen adaptation. Madhulika Liddle. She is a novelist and award winning short story writer. She is best known as the author for Musaffar Jung series. Purba, nearly funny, almost liberal, rarely serious, seldom right, yet she has the compulsive disorder to opine on everything. Purba writes for a ray. Our moderator for the day is Kanchana Banerjee. Kanchana is an author and who writes and enjoys writing thrillers. Talking about books, learning to hone her craft. One of her books, Nobody's Child, will soon be made into a web series, and her fourth book will be out soon. So I will be handing over the session to Kanchana for moderation.
Thank you, Trisha. And thank you, Shelley. Thank you, Team She the People. It's wonderful to be moderating a session for She the People and to have the opportunity of reaching out to authors across the city, across countries. And this time, I have a very talented group of a bunch of women who have written very diverse things. And we're going to be talking about a topic that is being debated, that is being written about a lot today. Um, is fiction dead? Now I know it sounds horrible to even say something like that, but this is being talked about not just in our country but internationally also. There are articles that have been written that is the novel dead and out, and are reading patterns changing all over the world and especially in India. So, given the fact that I'm an author based in India and my stories, my books are based in India, so I wanted to kind of have a discussion of this on this subject, and I welcome all of you to our discussion today. Madhulika, Sonia, Purba, a very warm welcome from a very, very freezing day in Gurgaon today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Hi, Kanchana. Thanks.
So we let's dive right into the topic, and I want to start with Madhulika, who writes amazingly wonderful historical books, historical fiction, and she writes over on a gamut of issues and across genres, and I'm in awe of people, writers like Madhulika, who are so able are able to write about different things. And being a history buff, I just love books on history. So, Madhulika, what is your opinion about this? Do you think fiction is dead?
No, that is, I mean, it's not just wishful thinking, and it's not, I mean, much as I would love fiction to be like alive and kicking, I think also one cannot say that it is, that there is any chance of it being dead, because I think there are a lot of people still around who actually do read a lot of fiction. I mean, I know people, writers among them, who say we never read non-fiction. So yeah, exactly. So there are plenty of people who read fiction, and you see that the number of prizes which are given out for fiction. Look at the Booker. The
Hmm.
one of the world's most famous prizes for literature is given for fiction. Look at
Hmm.
the fact that the Nobel Prize in all its years has only been once given for non-fiction. It's always been given for fiction. Uh, so I don't think uh, it's it makes sense to say that fiction is dead. Yes, maybe nonfiction might overtake it. And I know that there is a good deal of nonfiction out and it's very popular. But to say that it will completely kill off fiction, I don't think so. I don't think that's going to happen. I think the reading audience and the space is wide enough to accommodate both fiction as well as non-fiction.
Wonderful, great point. That, I mean, all the best and the most renowned literary prizes in the country and abroad are being awarded to fiction, and that's really a very good point. To be made in defense and in favor of fiction. So, Sonia, I come to you next. You're a writer, and you also of not just books but also screenplays. So you obviously work with both the mediums. That is, written paperbacks and the audiovisual medium.
Mhm.
What is your take on this? Do you think fiction, books, and when I'm talking about fiction, I'm talking about books. The habit of reading fiction. Do you think it's
Yeah.
it's going out? It's going out of the front door, back door, wherever.
I'm just going to go with the slightly romantic notion. I'm going to take a quote from Tyrion Lannister from
Oh,
Game of Thrones,
yes,
who
I know which
said
one you're
that,
going to talk about.
yeah, like what unites people,
Stories.
armies, flags, gold? No, it's stories. And there's nothing in the world more powerful than a good story, and nothing can stop it, and no enemy can defeat it. So maybe that's a very romantic view. But when I think of fiction, and I know we're just talking about the written word, the novel, I just think that the core of it is storytelling for fiction. And I can't see that ever just dying. It seems very dramatic to say that, and I'm aware. I'm not blinkered. I'm aware that we're in an age of mass distraction, and it's so much. And they say focus is now the hardest thing, and it's so much easier when you're watching rather than reading, and therefore we are libraries are closing and people are watching more television and less paper books are selling. But I refuse to believe that it's dying. Maybe there'll be something that happens that brings back that gives it that boost. The expectation from fiction has skyrocketed, so we probably need something that'll give it that boost. But
That
again,
boost.
I feel it's a little dramatic to say it is dead or
It is
dying, or maybe I'm just biased.
Thank you. And yeah, I mean, you quoted one of my favorite characters from Game of Thrones, and so good to know that there's a fellow GOT lover. I know Purba has also gobbled up the whole series. So yeah. And Madhulika,
Yeah,
I
totally.
don't think you're the GOT types.
No, I'm not. In fact, I remember once saying on Facebook that I was not, and I got such a lot of flack for it.
Don't worry, it's okay. So with that, Purba, I come to you. Like most of you would like either know Purba or you would have heard of Purba. Purba is a fantastic writer. She writes wonderful articles for various mediums, for various platforms, RA, etc. And other than that, she is a Twitter celebrity. Her tweets are stolen by people and sent as WhatsApp forwards all over the country, maybe all over the world. So I'm very proud to say that my friend Purba's tweets become stolen WhatsApp forwards. So Purba, what is your take on this? You think fiction is dead, non-fiction is here to rule. What do you think?
So I think of fiction as a shape-shifting form. So look at Twitter. People are always lying on Twitter, right? That's fiction. So we may call it propaganda, we may call it
Yeah.
fake news, but fiction is very much alive. Look at what we project ourselves as on Instagram. It's far from a reality. That's fiction. So, I mean, I remember a long time back, people were saying that blogs are dead. Blogs are not dead. Now you have microblogging, you have Twitter threads, and then you have Medium, you have Substack. So fiction, maybe the format is changing. Maybe people do not want to pick up a novel that soon. I remember there was a time I would read, every week a new novel. I don't do that anymore. But again, people are watching. I mean, where does Netflix get its stories from? From you people, right? So fiction cannot be dying. It's just that it's going to be, changing forms like a shape shifting, not a demon, but a shape shifting creature. That's my
Creature.
take on
Great.
it.
I'm really glad that you brought this point up, that fiction is possibly a shifting being or creature. Like this brings me to my next question: is that in the recent times we have seen a shift in the medium of reading. It's no longer a paper book. It was first a Kindle, and then we had the Audible, and then we had the podcast. So, which is your favorite medium to read, and what do you think about this different medium of writing? So, let's start with Sonia this time.
I'm going to say that I personally am a little schizophrenic. I tend to shift between a bit of a shapeshifter, a shift between mediums. So at any given point, and I'm reading. When I say reading, it's said loosely, but I probably have an audiobook on my phone, and I'm saving that for when I'm either walking or driving or whatever. I tend to maybe read a paper book only before bed, and I will read a electronic book. It's easier to keep a Kindle or a phone in your bag, so you always have it. If you're waiting in a doctor's room, you may not have your book with you, but you always have your Kindle or your phone. So I actually shift between the three, and I've come to love all three. I mean, one always loved the paper book, but I have to say I've really begun to love the audiobooks. Just finished a fantastic one by Amor Tolls, The Lincoln Highway, and just the way it was read, it was just so cinematic that I found it unputdownable. Yeah, I had to just keep on listening. So yeah, I appreciate all three. I can't say that I only stick to paper books. They feel fantastic and they smell fantastic, and I think we romanticize them, particularly writers. We're talking about the smell and everything, but the truth is the ebooks are really convenient. So I don't see myself going off them anytime soon.
True, I agree with you. Though, I mean, if anyone was to ask me, I'm very comfortable with Kindle. Of course, paper books one loves a lot. I'm very comfortable with Kindle, but somehow with audiobooks, I can only listen to audiobooks if I'm reading or listening to a non-fiction, which is not very often. But somehow with fiction, I feel that I'm not able to enjoy and relish the language, the plot so much in an audiobook. Madhulika, what do you think about this? Like, which is the medium that you prefer to read or listen to? What is your take on this?
Uh, as far as audiobooks is concerned, I tried some years back to sort of get into it and sort of listen to a book, and it was a horrible experience because I just could not focus.
Uh,
I think it's just my brain, the way I'm more a visual person than an auditory person. So for me, it just didn't work. And besides which, now there is no time when I'm not focusing on something. So for me to sort of put everything aside and just listen to an audiobook is it just doesn't work. So that's out of the frame for me. But I sort of spread myself equally between electronic and paper books. So at any given time, I'm reading one book on my phone or on my tab,
huh.
and one book which is a paper book. So I'm
Okay.
the sort of splitting between the two of them, and both are equally. I'm fine with both of them. But as Sonia also said, the electronic version has a convenience to it, which I think paper books lack. The biggest thing for me being the space
Yeah,
paper book
yeah,
takes up. I mean, like I've had shelves falling apart because there were too
Yeah.
many books on it.
true,
So,
true.
which is why I've had to sort of, much as I love paper books, I've had to sort of let go of them and sort of
So
start now buying more Kindle versions than paper.
True, true. What about you, Purba?
So,
yeah.
bookshelves filling with books, it's a statement about you. I mean, you invite guests over and they will walk in, they will see your bookshelves, they'll see these nice books. So you basically they're assuming, okay, she would be, well read and she would be slightly intelligent. But these days, the only book that I read is the instruction manual. But I am a Kindle. I'm a Kindle person. Like she said, the format is really, really convenient. You can bookmark, you can go back. And these days, I have an attention span of a cardboard. So I have, my tabs open. I read one chapter, take a break. I will, do a word game, do something, and then go back to my book. And sometimes when you're reading a book, you want to Google something, it's right there. You can Google. I'm sure you girls do it too. When you're watching something, a net series, you want to find out more about, okay, there was a reference in the history. Let me Google it. So I'll pause it. And that's what, so I'll say, yeah, I only am, for the last few years, I've only taken the Kindle version until unless it's not available on Kindle. Like Kanchana makes sure that I buy her physical books. But yeah, her books are
Of
always
course,
there on the
of
bookshelf.
course,
Yeah.
of course. Yeah, yeah. You're absolutely right, all of you. I think the sheer convenience of the electronic medium, has kind of ma- it just, and like that's the whole thing about technology. It just creeps into your life, and then you wonder how did you manage without it. But like, I mean, talking about my preference, I find I read a lot of writing help books, and I like to do that because I constantly like to hone my writing craft. And I've seen that when I'm like, I like to have the physical book with me. So if I'm reading Bird by Bird, or if I'm reading Stephen King's On Writing, or if I'm reading any other, so I have some of my favorites. If I'm reading those, I need to have a paperback so that I can underline, I can jot down a few questions. Does this happen with you? I mean, if like different kinds of books, do you prefer reading a different kind of book on a different medium, Madhulika?
Uh, Not really. And when I'm reading paper books, I have this sort of horror of making notes on a paper book. I like my books to be pristine. So if I am making notes, which I do a lot when I'm reading non-fiction historical books, because I do a
Hmm.
lot of
Yes,
historical
yes.
fiction. So I do have to do a lot of research. So
Hmm.
when I'm doing that, I keep a notepad beside me and I keep making notes on that.
Huh.
So no, I don't have any sort of preference really. So it's
So,
it's
here I
fine.
just want to interrupt you, Madhulika. So when you're doing research on history for your historical fiction, at that time, do you prefer a physical book, or is it okay if you get an electronic version of that?
It's fine. Either way is fine. It
Okay.
does not matter. So I'm happy with either
Hmm.
paper or electronic. Doesn't matter.
Okay, okay, okay. And I think, Sonia, you are very comfortable switching, as you said, you are a shifting, kind of reader, or
Reader.
like
Yeah.
reading. Yeah. So,
I think actually Purba said something about having these shelves filled with books. So I'm at present sitting in my study where the other corners of I mean, all the walls have books, and I chose the wall that doesn't because I thought that was distracting. So I tried to choose the wall that didn't have the book. But I have to say, increasingly, I am now putting a stop to this,
hmm,
partly running out of shelf space, but it's also because I just think it's all sorts of convenience. But
hmm,
the only thing that I don't like, so even when I'm researching stuff for a screenplay or reading
hmm,
stuff that I'm going to be using in material that I'm going to be using in a screenplay or a book, I
hmm,
would prefer a Kindle copy. But the only thing I like reading, which I'll never want to read on an electronic copy, is I love reading a lot
poetry.
of children's books, and I love
Oh,
reading these picture books and picture books about astronomy and stuff like that. So to me, that has to be tactile, and I have to feel it and see it and that joy of turning the pages. But I'm otherwise hooked on the electron. And I'm a bit of a techie, so I absolutely love the convenience of being able to send yourself a quote which you're
huh.
reading on the electronic medium, or underlining it and then seeing all your notes in one place, kind of thing. So
Wonderful.
yeah,
Wonderful.
yeah.
So, Purva, tell us about what you're reading currently. What you said that you have at least two, three books open on different mediums. So,
No,
like, what are you?
tabs.
Huh?
Kanchana, I said
Tabs.
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 I didn't say
Tabs.
books.
Okay.
I I read J.P. Delaney's The Girl Before Me, and
Hmm.
then before that, Bonnie Garmin's Lessons in Chemistry. All of them were Kindle versions. I read my magazine, your Spectator, and you have The Economist. All of them are online.
Okay.
And sometimes, I do try, because we have so many books that we've bought, especially my husband. He loves buying books, but he doesn't read them. He forgets to read them. So then,
Hmm.
I'm feeling guilty on his behalf. So
Huh.
sometimes I carry that book with me. My mom wasn't well in the hospital. But she wasn't well, but she was rebuking all the doctors. You don't look like a doctor. Are you sure you went to a medical college? And then, then carrying a book with me was handy. So I could
Huh.
bury my face and, so that people can't see me. I was getting embarrassed on my mother's behalf. So then the book was very handy, but I prefer my Kindle all the time. I Physical
Sure.
books are heavy. They're heavy. I mean, even when you're
Yeah.
traveling, you have to think
Yeah,
about
yeah.
baggage allowance and
Of
everything.
course.
So
Of
no.
course.
My
Absolutely.
iPad.
So, over to Madhulika now. Madhulika, do you, other than what you're reading currently, do you read out of your comfort zone? Do you read? I mean, if I were to ask you that, what is your genre which you don't normally reach out for? What would that be?
Erotica, probably.
Pardon?
Erotica, erotica,
Erotica.
I would think.
I would say the
I
same
think,
thing if someone asked that to me.
I,
Yeah.
I think I read maybe one or two, and no,
Hmm.
I think one book I've read, and
Hmm.
that was a collection of erotica which had come to me for review. So it had come,
Okay.
it was solicited from a publication that will you
Huh.
please review it, and it was very nice. But I don't know, I have this, I just don't read erotica. And
Same here.
yeah, at some point, I sort of got out of reading a romance of the Mills and Boon variety. I still read Georgette Hare. I'm very fond of Georgette Hare,
Huh.
but not Barbara Cartland sort. Other than that, I'm very comfortable with just about everything. So
Hmm.
I'm talking just about fiction. When it comes to
Yeah.
non-fiction, there are things which are very technological or say business
Hmm.
oriented, which I don't like reading. But mostly, I'm pretty happy reading pretty much everything.
Sonia, what about you? What are you reading currently, and what is your comfort genre? And what would you never ever
Um,
reach out for?
there are very few never evers, but the question is, do I enjoy it? So again, like Madhulika said, I'm not a fan of either erotica or even horror.
Hmm.
They don't do much for me. I find that after a little while, I want to keep it aside, and certainly not comfort for me. I Erotica, most of it has been a little bit boring. Actually, maybe there's something wrong with me, but yeah. But otherwise, I kind of like, I just read this YA fiction which I loved. I think it was by Sabah Tahir. She wrote, I think she's written All My Rage, and I thought it was just so beautifully written. Presently, just started Anxious People by this guy Backman, and
Yeah, Frederick
I just
Backman.
finished. Yeah, and
Hmm.
yeah, and then I just finished Camilla Shamsi's Best of Friends. So yeah, I can read YA, I can read obviously all forms of contemporary fiction, crime too, but I'm not sure I would last with. I would read horror if it's written by a friend, but I'm I'm not the hugest fan of either horror or erotica. Yeah.
Purba, what about you? What is your favorite genre to reach out to, and which is a genre that you would kind of pick up on your own?
I love so erotica girls. I will forward you a book. It's a collection. It's really good. It's called Electric Feathers. I'll forward it to you. It's a really nice collection and surprisingly very good.
Okay.
uh, I prefer books by women also because a woman's point of view is more relatable. And if it is about, the last one when I was reading Lessons in Chemistry, what a woman in science, the things, the battles she has to fight, and the kind of bias she faces, you relate to all these things. Not that all of us would relate. When even when there are sex scenes being, described, a male author will describe it differently, and a woman author will no, it will be very different. A male author will objectify the woman, and the woman will be talking about more about feelings, and the man would be talking about how, am I supposed to say it, how the nipples are showing from the shirt. So yeah, I prefer, because women write deeply sensitive books. Maybe I'm stereotyping. I prefer books written, and women should read them always.
So, Madhulika, would you kind of what would your comment be to what Purba just said, that I prefer reading books by women authors? This is a very interesting point of view that she has thrown into the.
Uh, okay, if personally, I have no, I can't generalize in that way because I find that there are women authors I had not liked reading, and there are male authors whom I found. In fact, I just finished reading a couple of days back. I finished reading a very interesting fantasy steampunk book called A Master of Jinn, written by a man, and in which all the main characters, all the most kick-ass characters, are all women. And he wrote it so well. It was such an entertaining book, and yet, uh, it was deeply insightful into the characters of the women themselves. So, my personal feeling is that it's impossible to generalize. There are men I know who've written very sensitively about not just women, but like feelings and all that sort of stuff, which a lot of people associate with women writers writing. And I have read books by women who can't pull that off, or who are writing in genres which do not necessarily require you to be uh, very sort of sensitive or whatever. I mean, it may be just the type of the book does not really sort of call for that level of sensitivity. So I think it goes from book to book.
Book
It
to book.
changes. Yeah.
Sonia, what do you feel about this?
Yeah, so I have to say one of the authors that influenced me a lot was Nick Hornby, and he happens to be a guy. And so I've never made I've never made a differentiation in. I adore women writers, and I think if I identify with something that they're writing, it's because I don't know if it's because she's a woman or because she's writing from a place that I didn't like, say, Jhumpa Lahiri, maybe because I grew up in Calcutta and I feel a lot of what she writes, and I've not lived in my own country for whatever, 25, 30 years. I feel a lot of that resonates with me, but I don't know if it resonates because she's a woman. I think it's those themes that are resonating with me. And, talking about writing uncomfortable stuff well, there's this ridiculously funny but poignant book by says this guy Adam Kay. He's written This Is Going to Hurt. He's actually a junior doctor at the NHS and in London, not anymore, but he writes, and he was in gynecology, and he's writing it, and it's hilarious. It's like side-splittingly funny, but it's also poignant, and it's written by a man. And so for me, it's never been a thing that I'm gravitating to, though I adore a lot of women writers. I'm not sure that I'm gravitating towards them because they are women. Yeah.
Great. Okay. So, another thing. This brings me to the next question. I have sometimes felt that some of the movies and some of the books that I had enjoyed when I was younger, much younger, in my college, when I read them again now, some of them, they don't really appeal to me so much as they did then. Have you? Let's start with Madhulika. Madhulika, have you ever grown out of a book? Something that you read long ago and you loved it, and have you reread that now in probably after 20-25 years and not liked it so much?
I don't recall that happening so much with books. In fact,
Mm.
yeah, it might have been, it might have happened with some Barbara cartoons, which I read when I was like, I think I was like 12 or 13 when I first read Barbara cartoons, thanks to my sister.
Huh.
My sister was
Hmm.
much older than me, and her school friends used to lend her these books. And she would bring them home and she would like, she would read and I would read. So, yeah, I used to read them back then, and I was like, wow, this is so fun, and this is so romantic, etc., etc. And now I think those are like really trash.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I've grown out of that. But
Yeah.
other than that, I don't think I've really sort of grown out of anything. I mean, it happens a lot with movies for me, a
Yes.
lot
Yes.
with movies.
Yeah.
But with books, no, not really. Not really.
Hmm. What about you, Purba? Is there anything that
Uh,
you've read a long time ago which you don't really didn't really enjoy?
so when I was in school, every time I finished my exams, I'd go to the local bookstore and take a stack of Mills and Boon. That was my
Hmm.
unwinding from. I will not touch a Mills and Boon again. I will never read those. Right.
Hmm.
And we had a whole lending library in our school where, doctor nurse romances are like very staid. Don't read them. Silhouette books are hotter. So these kind of books I will never read.
Ah.
Um, then there is this book called Journey to Ithaca by Anita Desai, which I loved the first time I read.
Hmm.
But when I read it again, I kept wondering why I liked it. So the first time when you read it, that state of your mind is very important. How you were feeling, at what stage of your life you were in.
Hmm.
Like Ayn Rand when we were in school and college, everybody read Ayn Rand. We the Living, yes. Then Fountainhead, yes. But now Ayn Rand, she's been called out for some of her problematic, views and what she did, white supremacy and all that. So I
Hmm.
don't think I will read Ayn Rand again because my opinion about her changed. Yeah. So these I'll never read a Mills and Boon ever again.
What about you, Sonia?
So, I think I have a disadvantage because I totally skipped the Mills and Boon, Barbara Cartland thing because I used to hero worship my brother and he used to read Westerns. He used to read Louis L'Amour and Sudden and stuff like that. So, my big thing when I was growing up was I want to read those books. And I have to confess, I haven't gone back to reading them, but and I skipped that whole phase of reading a Barbara Cartland. I don't know how it would be if I were to go back today and read it. Maybe I should try them, but that whole thing was lost on me.
Hmm.
But I haven't gone back to anything uh, that I can consciously remember and found it lacking. Maybe movies. I still believe a lot of the movies that I fell in love with, which were
Yeah.
romantic and sweet, which was whether it was Pretty Woman or When Harry Met Sally and whatever. I find that if I'm watching them, I still find them. There's something in this season of watching Love Actually and not getting tired of it. So I'm an old-fashioned soul when it comes to these things. I can keep watching them from time to time and not feel that they are ridiculous.
Okay.
But I haven't come across any books that
Hmm.
have told me, how did you read that and fall in love with it?
Mhm. How about the classics? Has any one of you gone back to rereading the classics? The reason I ask is because some time back I just kind of said that let me just read Thomas, some of Hardy's books, Thomas Hardy, and some of Dickens' books. So some of them like I remember Tess. I I found it so difficult to go through that book. And I had read that very very easily, and and really enjoyed it when I was way back in college, light years ago. So any of the classics, have you reread them recently or in the last 2 3 years? How has it been, Madhulika?
I have actually read probably more classics now in the past, say, 5 years or so than I read back in school or college. Because when I was in school, we did not actually get around to reading too many classics, and that didn't happen in college either. Because probably for one reason, because I wasn't majoring in English.
Yeah.
So a lot of the classics I read have happened in the past 5 years or so. A good deal of Dickens, and also from other countries like France and the US and all. And it's been fine.
It's
It's not been
been
a
good.
problem.
That's nice. So, Sonia and then Purba, we will have to wrap up. So, have you gone back to reading some of the classics? Sonia, you next.
I haven't tried anything lately. I have to say that I'm always jumping from, oh, I'm dying to read this new book that's come out. So I haven't really had a chance, but it's been on my mind. And I think now that you've mentioned it, one should attempt it for sure. And on the
Okay.
next session, I'll tell you.
Great, great. So Purva, you've already, kind of shown a hand gesture that you don't want want to be asked this question. So tell us what are there any books or any authors that you are looking forward to reading in 2023? Purva.
No, I'm sorry if I'm sounding awful, but
No.
none. I get all my book recommendations. So people say, internet is taking away our attention, but this from internet. I get all my book recommendations. They are authors I've never heard of. Every author is claiming to be a New York bestseller. So how do you trust it? And then Reese Witherspoon also has a book club, and I'm sorry, but she recommends the most awful books. So then it's to Twitter only that somebody say, oh, I read this book. This was so good, and then you want to. And someone most of the times they are basically promoting their friends. You find out later after you've purchased the book. But yes,
Exactly.
so I'm looking forward to new recommendations next year when people write. I have in fact bookmarked one or two because somebody asked, what are the
Huh.
most spectacular books have you read in 2000? Because year end and people start making their list. So people were making the list. I've bookmarked a few. And yes, I plan to download them on Kindle and read them. But I wouldn't say I have any author. I would love if Khalid Hosseini wrote again. He hasn't
Ah,
in a
yes.
very
It's
long
been a
time.
long time.
I'm
It's been a
looking
long
for,
time.
yes. So
Been
for,
a long
yes, him, I would love to read. Jhumpa has started writing in Italian ever since, she married her Italian guy. So
Yeah.
she doesn't write in English
Yeah.
anymore.
Hmm.
And Arundhati is doing activism. So yes, and I don't look forward to Chetan. Chetan, the one book I will not read is the Chetan Bhagat. I will not be reading his book.
So, Purba, there is going to be a book in 2023 which will not be on any bestsellers list, and it will not be recommended by Reese with a Spoon or by any celebrity, and that's my book. So you can pick that up.
Mine,
I will.
me
Yes, I
too,
look
me
forward to
too.
see Kanchana new book.
So and Madhulika, like I've read her, what's it called, Garden of Heaven, right?
The Garden of Heaven. Yeah.
Garden of Heaven. So I think I think the part two or the next book of it should be out in 23.
Yes, which is why I was raising my hand because
Yes.
I'm in the same boat as you.
Yeah,
It's not going to be
absolutely.
on any bestseller list. It's not going
Yeah.
to be recommended
So
by
like
Reese
I mean,
Witherspoon.
there are these self-proclaimed bestsellers on Facebook, on Amazon all the time, and I keep telling people that please, I'm a hardly selling author. You know, my books barely make it wherever, so I'm not on any best-selling list. But yeah, I'm waiting for Madhulika's next book. I enjoyed her first book.
Thank
I
you.
love
Thank
history.
you.
And so, Madhulika, what are you, any author, any books that you are waiting for, other than your own, of course?
Well, not in 2023, but Achal Malhotra has a book coming out, I think, sometime in this month.
Hmm.
And that is what I'm really looking forward to. I think it's a historical which
Hmm.
starts somewhere in, I think, the early 20th century or something.
Hmm.
I forgot
Hmm.
what the name is, but it sounds wonderful. And Achal writes very well,
Yes,
and she knows
yes,
history very well. So
absolutely.
that is one thing I'm looking forward to. Other than that, well, I as Purba said, I also get all my recommendations off the net and mostly through Goodreads. I am very active on Goodreads. So I sort of follow a lot of people I've discovered they have tastes similar to mine. So from them, I usually keep getting interesting clues on what to look for next. So let's see what comes my way.
Great. Sonia, you are last. Sonia, what I mean, any particular author, any book that you are looking forward to reading in 2023?
So, I tend to stay away from lists. I just, there's something, I'm allergic to lists. When somebody says this is the new list and what, it's already my hackles are up. Like, so I think I kind of find the people of similar tastes in my kind of reading. And if they recommend something, then I tend to go for that. Or, like you said, if one is fond of certain authors, you're just waiting for their books to come, and irrespective, even if they're trashed, I would go and read them. So, people, I love Julian Barnes and Jhumpa Lahiri, Amor Towles. So if they come out with something, Khalid Hosseini, I don't think you wait for people to review it. You just go out there and
Absolutely.
get it and read it. So
True.
I hope that all these people write.
Great. So with that, I have massively overshot the time because I forgot to like I was so busy chatting with all of you, I forgot to look at the chat section. So thank you
Now we
so
are
much.
41.
Yeah, now we are 41. Thank you so much, Madhulika, Sonia, Purba.
Thank you.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
joining me and for this wonderful chat session about books, about reading on a very cold, winter afternoon. Thank you so much, and thanks, Shelley. Thanks, Team She the People, for giving me the opportunity of curating and putting up the panel. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kanchana.